Welcome to Rev Reads. I am pleased to have you here today with another author interview. I'm sitting down today with Kyle Mann, the editor-in-chief at the Babylon Bee. Kyle, thank you so much for coming on Rev Reads today.
Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
No, I'm excited about this book. I've been looking forward to it since it was first announced, and we're talking about the guide to gender. And I finished reading it a few days ago on my digital copy. Still waiting for that hard one to hold in my hands. But since this is on the guide to gender, and you guys are teaching all of us about gender and how it works today, I think it will only be appropriate for you to give us an example of how someone picks their gender according
Mhm.
to the guidebook. So, according to the guidebook, if you want to know your gender, I need the last four letters of the last person, the last four letters of the last name of the last
Last
person
name.
you tested.
Um, my friend's last name is Phipps, Phipps.
P H
So,
I P.
Phipps. So last four would be IPPS. The genderator. He's using the genderator there in the
Oh yeah,
book.
there's no way to go. Yeah, so we're picking your gender according to the guide. This will be your
Mhm.
gender for the rest of the interview.
Okay.
Um, uh, Not sure how you're gonna live this out, but according to the guidebook, your gender is you're a bohemian, saxophone, Mormon, ocarina-kin.
Okay. It kind of works, like Bohemian and saxophone. There's a musical bent to it. The Mormons have Moroni with the horn.
The
And
Mormons
the
love
other
their musicals,
Yeah,
so
and
yeah.
they have the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. So yeah, very musical. So I feel like this
Yeah.
gender is kind of a melodic, go with the flow kind of gender. That's how I feel this
Yeah.
morning.
No, I think you get into show tunes a lot with your gender, so,
Oh, I absolutely do.
yeah,
Even
no,
when I was in my male gender, I like show tunes. So
but now you can really like show tunes with your bohemian saxophone,
now I don't have to
Mormon
listen to them in
ocarina-kin.
secret. I can listen to them in public.
Oh, glory be. So your gender generator, allows people to create, absolutely insane genders for themselves. While you guys were, looking up stuff to research for the book, did you come up with any genders that were like so crazy that like you couldn't even put them in the book, or maybe you put them in the book, but everybody's going to assume you just made that up?
Well, that's the real problem, is we're trying to come up with satire and funny gender, stuff, and there's the line between the stuff that we made up and the stuff that's actually out there is so blurred, that it's hard to tell which one's real and which one's fake. I think in the book we have some references to it, but there was an actual, like, engineer at Google who said that he or she, um, I forget what their, biological gender was, but they said that they identified as a tall, ornate building during this
No,
talk at Google. And it was like,
no.
there was the typical, like, somebody said they felt like they were a dragonkin, and that was an actual thing. And then someone else was like, "Well, I actually feel like my gender is tall, ornate building." And it sounds like a bad conservative joke, but it's it's real. And so that was the real challenge, was trying to think of stuff that wasn't. So I think probably some of those bits and pieces in the gender generator and those different columns are actual things, that we found online, and then of course we just punched it up a little bit by combining them all.
I just I can't get over tall building. Like, yeah.
Tall building.
Okay. One of the things that kind of surprised me about the book when I'm reading through it is I expected it all to be just, picking at the concept that you can make up your own gender. But a lot of the book is on really everything when it comes to men and women, and because you have a chapter basically poking fun at all the stereotypes of men, a chapter poking fun at all the stereotypes of women. But probably the chapter that I enjoyed the most, I think mainly because I have a 15-year-old daughter who is entering the dating world in 2023, which is kind of,
Sorry about
terrifying
that.
at that
Yeah.
age. Um, and so you have a whole chapter on attracting a mate, picking up a partner. What do you think is probably the most insane thing about the dating world today that if you would have asked people 5 years ago, 10 years ago, they would have been like, no way that'll ever
Well, luckily, I'm not in the dating world because, like, I don't know, like, I got married real young, right out of high school, pretty much. I had a couple years of college and then got married, and I'm so lucky and blessed. Like, I feel there was that meme that was going around that was like, does any of the other millennial people like watch the dating scene today and feel like they caught the last chopper out of Nam?
happen.
And that's, you see the young people today and you feel so terrible because it's all, they're the first generation really that's entirely grown up with the internet. We had the internet, but
No, yeah.
not during the
In a
formative
totally
years.
different way,
It,
totally
it,
different way.
in a different way, and not during the formative years. Like, we had it a little bit later on. It wasn't part of our our childhood was playing baseball in the street, and the street lights come on and you come inside. That was still kind of the way of things until, maybe until we were in middle school or whatever, and you started to get the internet. But even then, the internet wasn't 24/7. It wasn't like constantly connected all the time to everybody. It
Yeah.
was like, hey, I'm gonna go on the internet for 30 minutes. It was like a session. I'm gonna sit down, dial in, go on
Go to
eBaum's
go to a
World.
my AOL login and talk to people I don't know.
Go to eBaum's World or AOL or uh, Homestar Runner and load the latest video. It was like
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
It was one of among it was one among many of like entertainment options that you had, or ways to kill time that you had. I could watch TV. I could maybe go on the computer and check my email. It was you checked your email. It wasn't constant all the time. Then I sound like an old man complaining about this stuff. But you apply that to dating, and it's just, you know, some I saw someone post their like dating stats. I don't know how real this was, but because it was insane to me. But some guy posted his dating stats on Reddit or something. It was like, I was connected with 49,000 possible women on, Tinder or whatever they are. And it was like he tracked all his results. I swiped right on 60% of them. 95% of those swiped left on me, so it wasn't a match. And then of those 5%, it's like it narrows down to where, like, I judged 49,000 women based on a selfie and narrowed it down, and I ended up going on one date. Like, what? We
wow.
Isn't
Yeah,
that crazy? Just the
yeah,
desensitization of, like, and then training your mind to look at women in the way of, like, I'm judging you based on the screenshot. It's no different than any other content on the internet, like
yeah,
Instagram or TikTok, like funny, not funny, thumbs up, thumbs down, scroll, see the next meme, see the next meme, see the next meme, and that's how you see other people, that you're trying to start a relationship with. That's I don't know, that kind of instant gratification brain crack for romance. It just seems like a terrible idea. All of that to say, I'm sorry, I'm an old boomer man ranting about things, but go to church, meet a nice girl there, stay away from the
probably,
dating
yeah. No, it's the
apps,
best
I
way to do
think.
it still. Church is the best place, so, for meeting spouses, but no, so it's just so one of the things that did kinda surprise me about the book was how, you hit on humor in multiple places where I didn't expect. You almost think it's gonna be this, whole book on picking genders and crazy genders, but you hit on all these other things. But speaking of dating, you do give some dating advice in the
Mhm.
book. There's another generator in there that I would like to also see if you would do,
Oh, great, yeah,
and
yeah.
that is the pickup lines. So maybe I can give my kids some good pickup lines
Oh,
for
wonderful.
when they're out there. So I need a 5 letter word, and we'll generate
Um,
a pickup line.
me I'm looking at our Bucky's stuffed doll here. So let's say Bucky, Bucceee, I think.
This is gonna be good.
Oh, this is the pickup line generator. So we're
Yeah.
finding out what. Okay. All right.
Okay. So here is I'm gonna tell my kids to use this when I get home.
Okay.
This is here's our Babylon B pickup line.
All right.
Come on, gangsta. Will you allow me to take a sniff of some consequences? Take a sniff of some consequences.
That sounds like something Gen Z might say, and I just wouldn't know what
Oh,
it
totally.
meant. Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, totally. I'll sniff the consequences,
Yeah.
bro.
No,
That
it's a
sounds
yeah.
bussin'.
No, the will you allow me to is definitely
Will you?
definitely Gen Z language there. So
Ask you
come on,
ask for
gangster.
consent before you. sniff
Yeah.
consequences for sure.
Yeah, yeah. The one thing that's sort of been in my mind though the entire time I was reading your book was an episode of Bill Maher from 3 years ago. So this episode was in my mind all the time when I was reading this book. I probably thought about it once every single chapter. So 3 years ago on Bill Maher, Dennis Prager is a guest, and Dennis Prager is trying to illustrate how the left liberals in America don't care about truth and they're crazy. And they're all like, Dennis, you're being obscene. Like liberals aren't crazy. Like we still believe in the truth. And Dennis Prager's example was the left is crazy because the left claims that men can menstruate. And he must have said it like 5 times. Men can have periods. He kept saying that. And when he said that, the whole audience burst into laughter. Bill
Yeah.
Maher said, "No one says that." All the people on the panel said, "Dennis, no one would ever make that claim. How dare you claim that the left would say that men can have periods?" And so he just basically got laughed off the stage that he would even suggest that a man can have a period. And now, obviously, if you say that men can't menstruate, that's like hate speech. So, how do you think we went so far, so fast in America?
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy, and you're right. It's like the mainstreaming of these fringe ideas because it is true that there was kind of like this concept of transgenderism, men can become women, women can become men, has been around a long time. Um, and we kind of made fun of it on the right, for the last 10, 15 years. It was just kind of oh, what I can identify as an attack helicopter, like that kind of memes or joking around. And then that got mocked on the left, like, oh, come on, like, you're making fun of a very small subset of the left. Most people don't believe that. And then within, it feels like the last, I don't even know, like 2 years, three
Well, that
years,
that that
you
interview I
know,
think was 2020. It was early 2020. So
and how
it was just before
quickly
the pandemic happened. Just before the pandemic.
it's how quickly it took over, that this very small subset of the left took over their entire agenda, and they're pushing that for the whole movement. It's so crazy to me that that happened so fast. But I guess, from a philosophical perspective, if your worldview is progressive and you believe that the next step is always forward and better for humanity, then you have no underpinnings, you have no mooring to like anchor yourself to. If you don't have any kind of moral value or standard, if you don't have any kind of objective morality outside of yourself saying, no, we have to stick to these things, we have to hold to these things and defend these things and hold fast, which is all, language you read in all the epistles, that we have to hold fast to these doctrines that were handed down, you know, like on the right and more specifically within Christianity and theologically conservative Christianity, we believe that um, like the most important thing we can do is to stand firm when the world is changing around us. Like that is our directive, is to stay the same. and
Oh
and
yeah,
it
yeah.
and if we've progressed too far, not stay the same, but reform ourselves to the standard of the Word of God. And you have something that you're constantly trying to turn back to as the standard. But when you don't have that and you say, no, our salvation is in constant progression, then you're going to, by definition, constantly accelerate on they use the hockey stick graph for climate change. I think the hockey stick graph is how quickly we're accelerating off the cliff in a lot of ways. It just becomes exponential at some point, and this happens to be the issue that it was that they have latched onto. I mean, Chesterton has a great illustration I was reading in I think it's in Orthodoxy about this post, and he says that like he's comparing different types of conservatism and says, well, conservatives say, well, we have this post that we want to defend, like a post in your garden that's white, and he's like, the conservative thing to do is not to abandon the post and let it rot, like, because I think that's a lot of times what we think as conservatives is like, oh, the world is changing around us, politics is moving on, but I just kind of sit here, and that's what being a conservative is just kind of complaining about things He says the conservative's job is to always be repainting the post. We have
Yeah.
to constantly be reforming and calling ourselves back to our traditions that are handed down through the Word of God. Um, and so, so I don't know. Maybe I'm just an old man boomer again, but I I do think that progressivism um, necessarily lends itself to the fact that they will progress, even if that means off of a cliff.
Yeah, no, no, I like the Chesterton illustration. No, it makes sense because that's what we're always trying to do is we're trying to go back to the center, back to the foundation of God's word. And I feel like one of the foundational things that we have always had before, up until 3 years ago, is this idea of swapping your sex was just it was in you wouldn't consider it. It was so out of the realm of ordinary, you wouldn't even think that it would be a possibility. And to me, what the danger of today is that now we're saying to the youth, it's possible. Like you can, at the age of 3, 5, 7, 9, you can choose to be the other sex. And before that would have been insane. And now it's not. And I feel like the purpose of your book, you could correct me on this, but I feel like the purpose is to go back to a worldview where that's insane again. Like where we don't think that that is normal, where we're willing to say, yeah, that's something that you should think is ridiculous and not do. What do you think is the serious consequence of allowing people to consider changing sex, changing gender? Like what do you see as major consequences to no longer having that foundation on sex and gender?
Well, if we go back to like C.S. Lewis and what he writes about on the abolition of man, in a lot of ways he predicted this movement, because what he said was that the purpose of education and the purpose of educating young people in among the pre-moderns, and when you go back to 2,000 years ago, the purpose of educating young people was to tell them, hey, there are some objective standards outside of yourself. There's this thing called reality, and it's going to slap you around. And your job is to find what's incongruous in your soul, in your heart, with this objective standard, and change yourself to match this standard.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So it was if you find that you're being dishonorable, it was to go, oh, I'm dishonorable, I should be honorable. And he famously hated this textbook that he found where it was talking about how waterfalls aren't beautiful, that's just your opinion. And he said, no, that's not true. Like our job as educators is to show people that there's objective beauty out there in the world. And if you don't find a waterfall beautiful, there's something wrong with you. Not the waterfall. And we have flipped that on its head, and we're now in a world where they say, oh, the world isn't like reality. You find yourself out of step with reality, you feel uncomfortable. Okay, change reality then. It's
Yeah.
like that you change your body, make your body conform to your feelings, rather than mastering yourself. So he has that quote about we're raising men without chests, and we have no regulation between our heart and our mind. So all of that to long and rambling uh, way say that we're taking the most vulnerable people, which is teenagers who are classically just always traditionally uncomfortable in their bodies and uncomfortable in their skins. We all were, you know.
Oh, how could you not be? Going through puberty is awful. Like,
It's the
yeah.
worst, right?
Yeah.
And we're taking them in their most vulnerable time and saying, "Oh, you feel uncomfortable, huh? Interesting. Well, the problem is that you're a mistake.
Yeah.
Your body is wrong. You were born in the wrong body. You're a giant mistake." Like that is the message of transgenderism, is that teenagers were put in the wrong body by mistake. How horribly, condemning is that for these kids, and damning is it for them, to hear this horrible message during the worst time of their lives that, oh, the only way look at Disney movies 20 years ago, and it's like, you're beautiful just the way you are. You don't have to
Yeah.
fit in. And that same existentialist message is now morphed into, oh, you're different and unique. Okay, cut off parts of your body and then
Yeah.
you'll be normal, and then you'll fit into this subgroup. So it's just a horrible, horrible thing, and the consequences are going to be severe, and as we look in the years to come, and I'm sure we're going to have a lot of people with tons of regret.
Yeah. Yeah. You had a chapter in here on religion and church in the book. Reminded me a little bit of watching clips of woke preacher clips. You ever watch woke
Yeah,
preacher
yes,
clips on
yes.
Twitter? So yeah, that channel is probably one of the most insane ones. Our Twitter feeds with stuff that's coming out on churches today, and it just always shocks me that churches have so embraced this woke culture that they have just swallowed it whole. And I just wonder if you had any thought on what do you think the motivation is for those churches to go in line with all of this progressive movement? Because to me, it just I'm a pastor. I see it as just absolutely insane and harmful to the youth in my church. So, what would you think would be a religious reason for following along in queer theory?
I mean, I think it goes back to the, age old struggle for Christians who want to be loved by the world. You feel I can feel that when I watch those kinds of clips, where it's like mincing your words, like, yeah, well, we're Christians, and yeah, we believe the Bible, and it's weird, and but hey, but we're not like those fuddy duddy Christians. Like, we're cool, we're mainstream, we're cool with whatever the world wants, whatever's cool, whatever's out there in the world. It's the same story that's been plaguing the church for 2,000 years. That we're tossed to and fro by every wind of doctrine, and that includes the doctrine of gender theory or whatever's cool out in the culture right now. This all stems, you can go back 50 years or whatever, and you can look at the seeker sensitive church movement that was like, okay, we're not going to put the Bible front and center anymore. The church is no longer for the believing ones. Church is now for the crowd, and we want
Yeah.
to bring in all these people, and the pastor's going to do a motorcycle jump over the stage. Come on, it's going to be awesome. Launch himself out of a cannon. We had a great old Babylon Bee article that was like, pastor launching himself out of a cannon, suddenly realizes he's going to have to top this next week. you know and it's this like, you always have to, it's that same thing of progressivism, like you have to go one step further, constantly one upping yourself in order to continue to entertain the crowds. And it's nothing more than, wolves in sheep's clothing that want to tickle the ears of people who want their ears to be tickled.
It's
Figurative.
interesting that yeah, there's something you said in your answer that just sort of keyed me on it. It's kind of just like the book of Galatians all over
Yeah,
again.
sure.
The Judaizers wanted to be like the Jewish crowd, and they wanted to stay in with that group, and we've just sort of replaced Mosaic legalism for queer theory, which is an awful trade.
Yeah, you could look to it that, like, the Church of Corinth, that was like looked
Yeah, yeah,
so
exactly,
much
yeah.
like the world outside, when it came to sexual immorality, and it's like, yeah, I'm a Christian, but I'm a cool Corinthian Christian, you know what I mean? You know, and it's like, and Paul was just screaming in these angry letters, like, no, that's not, no, so
Yeah, no, the you could do a whole series probably on the Church of Corinth, like a church that actually names itself Church of Corinth because they're trying to be
yeah,
like,
exactly.
the world around them.
Yeah,
So,
yes.
the one thing I feel like reading this, the one thing that I'm gonna feel like you guys will get attacked the most is that people will tell you the book is cruel. They'll
Mm.
say this is a cruel book because you have 8-year-old boys who are living as girls and you are mocking them, or you're going to take the trans teen and drive them closer to suicide. So how would you respond to those people who would say the guide to gender is just a book of cruelty to these people who have this struggle?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, the cruel thing is to affirm somebody's mental illness and um, keep affirming them down this road to destruction that's going to lead to tears and regret and push people closer to suicide. I believe that is the way towards those destructive things, is if we continue to affirm these things that are not going to result in people's ultimate joy and happiness. So now, when it comes to comedy, like a book like this that's using humor and comedy to mock these things, we always try to mock ideas. Yes, some of our jokes will make fun of specific people, Yes, we mock Joel Osteen. I'll admit that, but but so we'll mock certain people that we would see as like false teachers or leading people astray. But we do it for the benefit of the millions of people who follow these people that you might find a crack in the armor, and someone might go, "Oh, I never thought about it that way before." And that's one of the most powerful things about humor. Mark Twain has a quote where he talks about how you can argue with a lie for years and you can never dethrone it, but once you start mocking the idea and making it look stupid, he's like he's it's I think the quote is against the assault of laughter nothing can stand. And
It's true. It's true. Yeah.
one of the best ways, especially for our young people, to like what's the worst thing that in a young person's life? It's like the worst possible
Be
thing in
made
their
fun of.
mind
Yeah.
is to believe something stupid or that everybody's
Yeah.
making fun of. And so the more we can mock the idea of transgenderism and gender theory, I'm all for that. Make it look stupid. Obviously, there's kids who are hurting, and there are people who are hurting, and we're not trying to make fun of those people. But I think if we can start to pull the cultural conversation in the other direction and make that whole expose that movement and the people who are manipulating our kids and coming for our children in all these ways, if we can make that movement look stupid and ridiculous, nobody's going to want to join it anymore. So that's what we're trying to do. Also, we just want to make people laugh with funny stick figures punching each other.
So yeah, no, so you talked about exposing the movement, which I think is should be a key goal of this book. And probably if I could change one thing in the book, if I could make one critique to change, is you have a chapter on activism.
Mm,
So where you make fun of gender activism or queer theory activism, and it's toward the end of the book. And my one critique is that I would have put that as like maybe your first chapter.
mm.
Like, we're gonna help you be an activist, and that was
Oh,
chapter one. And here's the reason why I would have that be the first chapter after reading through it, is that there were some moments, and it happened quite often in the book where, and I hate that I feel this way because I feel like this is 21st century. I shouldn't even say 21st century. This is 2021 to 2023 conditioning my brain to think a certain way. There were moments in the book I feel bad for those 10-year-old trans kids
mm.
because I'm like, I don't want them to be made fun of. But then I hit the activism chapter where all of a sudden you reveal in that chapter how the Babylon Bee is not punching down at the trans kid. You are punching up at all of the institutions that have been captured by gender.
Yeah. Well, this book is inerrant, so for you to criticize, it is anathema. You are anathema. But yeah, exactly. And that's one of the points of conversation that always comes up is like, oh, you're punching down. It's like, really? We, this little independent Christian satire site, uh, that sometimes we can't keep the lights on, and it's like we are punching down at this. They were accused us of punching down when we like made that joke about Rachel Levine, who's like one of the most powerful
Powerful,
people
yeah.
in the country, and is saying things like we need to trans your kids, and we're like, so we are the ones punching down, even though we hold none of the cultural power, and they control all of the institutions, Disney, Nike, Coca-Cola, Bud Light, Target. You just go through the list. Like all of these people are all like pro ESG. These corporations are pushing this stuff. Yeah, and it's like we're the ones punching. How do we even punch down? We don't have any power. Like I'm just a random guy in my garage making a joke, and I'm punching down. But that's what intersectionality gets you because we're Christians, conservatives, white, male, whatever the
Yeah.
different whatever they can
So
pin on
by
us.
default, you're punching down.
We're
Yeah.
punching that. That's because of intersectionality. Yeah.
So yeah, so what's great about that activism chapter though is because if you are feeling that way reading through this book, like maybe you guys are just making fun of the random trans kid, who's trying to figure out life, and they've been fed a book of lies. You get to that activism chapter and you just realize you guys aren't making fun of the random trans kid. You're making fun of this. And what's crazy about that section where you talk about all the different institutions that they've captured, it just gets funnier as you go through because I don't think people sit there and actually spend time thinking through, yeah, they first captured our universities. And oh yeah, they did capture the hospitals and the medical institutions. And oh yeah, they got children's entertainment with Disney. And just the more you go through, it's hard to, I don't think a lot of people spend time thinking of all the institutions that they've captured. And that's one of the great things that you guys do in the book is, make fun of how much of our culture has just been ensnared by this movement.
Yeah,
So
we have the great old Babylon Bee article that's like, man who agrees with universities, corporations,
yeah,
I don't know, it rattles on a few things,
yeah,
and then it's
yeah,
like, says he's part of the resistance,
yeah, yeah.
It's like
It's like, no, no, you're not. Once when the president in charge and the largest corporations in America are on your side, you are not
you are
part of
no
the
longer,
resistance.
but that is what, like, Marxism has this whole, there's even charts. These people at the center hold power. These people on the fringes don't hold power. Our goal is to revolutionize and capture that center. But
Yeah.
the absurd thing right now is they have captured the center. They are running
Oh
things,
yeah, totally.
and so we're the ones out on the fringes, and they still think that they are the oppressed ones and we are the oppressors. And that's the absurdity of it that makes it so much fun to write comedy about.
And no, and that's what made that chapter just hilarious to go through. And so my one complaint about the book, I ought to move that to the front, but I'm guessing it's too late to make that change in the print.
If you disagree
It's
with objective reality of our book, then it is your heart that needs to change, as C.S. Lewis would have said.
okay. I'll repent and
Yeah,
put on
thank
my
you.
sackcloth when this interview's over. So, have you seen any pushback already on the book?
We had weird, like, we were having trouble getting it listed on some sites, for shopping things, and we don't know if that had to do with the, Babylon Began to Gender or whatever. Maybe it's just getting through because they think it's serious. They see this, like, androgynous person with pink hair and then this bearded lady on the front, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this is great." So we were thinking about trying to submit it to some library story hours and see if they can recognize it as satire or not. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm surprised that the link is still up on Amazon. We'll see how long that lasts.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, looking at the cover, if you guys just took the Babylon Bee stuff out,
Right.
like it could totally be,
It's
one of the
not far
other.
from, if you go through like Barnes and Noble these days, there's like, even in the kids section, there's these end caps, celebrate pride, celebrate gender.
Yeah,
And the books look like this. Like
yeah.
this isn't really sad. Not like Carmen. They look like this right here. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, no, yeah. I mean, no one would deface Carmen.
No one, yeah. I just realized he's like peeking out at me, which is kind of cool.
Okay, cool. We'll go with that. So your book is a satire look at topics of gender wokeness. Do you have any non-satire books that you'd recommend since this is a book review channel?
Yeah, Babylon Bee has published 3, 4, 5 books, I think. We've got Guide to Wokeness, Guide to Democracy, and Guide to Gender, and then we have How to Be a Perfect Christian, and we have our Sacred Texts collection that has a giant beautiful coffee book with all of our with like our best of Babylon Bee articles type thing. It's awesome. And then I wrote a novel called The Postmodern Pilgrim's Progress with my managing editor Joel Berry, not Joe Berry, and that was a fun kind of, it's not satire, but it is like an allegory, fantasy allegory, loosely using the structure of John Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress with some sci-fi and dragons. So
I
that's a fun book.
reread Pilgrim's Progress. I reread Pilgrim's Progress after reading yours and
Uh-huh.
then doing the review on yours. And I'm glad it was only loosely based on Pilgrim's
You
Progress.
don't like you're
That
not a
book
fan.
did not hold up like I thought it did.
Really? I
Uh,
read it like every year and I love it
no,
every
you
time.
don't. You do
I do.
not read Pilgrim's
I
Progress
love
every
Pilgrim's
year.
Progress. I don't understand you. I don't
It's
understand you
it's so
people.
repetitive. It's so repetitive.
I don't understand you people who don't like Pilgrim's Progress, but just
Okay.
whatever.
All right. All
Whatever.
right. This will probably be my last conversation with Kyle Mann.
Everybody can be
But
wrong. But again, you need to conform your heart to objective reality that Pilgrim's Progress is a great book.
okay, I was trying to give a praise to your book in that shade I was putting
This
on the
interview is
original Pilgrim's
over.
Progress.
No, I'm just kidding. Well, thank you. I
All right,
appreciate that.
well, thank you so much, Kyle, for coming and being on Rev Reads. Thank you all for watching, and the book that we are encouraging you to get is the Babylon Bee's Guide to Gender. Do you know what day it's specifically coming out?
September
So
19th. It's tattooed
September 19th.
on my hand and forehead, so I don't forget. September 19th.
You put it on your right hand and on your
Yeah.
forehead.
Yeah,
So
both.
it's your
Yeah.
the mark of
Yep.
the Babylon Bee.
The mark of the bee.
Okay. All right. So September 19th is the release date for the Babylon Bee Guide to Gender. I read it already. It is as funny as all of the previous guidebooks. So if you liked those, you'll enjoy this one as well. And I would also say that this is probably the most important of the guidebooks because out of all the subjects you've covered before, democracy and wokeness, I mean, this overlaps with wokeness obviously somewhat, but this is to me the subject that needs to be ridiculed the most. We need our teens to just think this is outlandish and not considered.
Like, join me and create a world where in a few years, some kid's like, "I'm a tall, ornate building gender," and all the other kids are like, "Come on, man, that's so lame. That's so 2023." That's the world we need to create.
Hey, that's yeah, no, that's exactly what we're doing. So that's what I'm trying to do with my kids. I'm gonna have them read through this book once I get it, so that they'll be able to have a proper
Perfect.
view of not conforming to the gender queer view and going back to the old white post that
Yes.
Chesterton wants us to. But thank you so much, Kyle, for being on. And I want to again encourage you guys to pick up the Babylon Bee Guide to Gender, which comes out September 18th. Thank you so much for viewing, and I hope you have a blessed day.